Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hat Talk. James is going to walk us through his favorite hat today, Fedora, and we're also going to explore these other wonderful hats we have on display, such as this Mint Veronis or this Space Hoon hat. James, thanks for joining us on this very special, oh God, make yourself appropriate. Thank you. Now, thank you for this very special episode of Hat Talk. We're very excited to talk about Fedora. Now, James, per always, tell me about your hat.
Well, you see, Cody, this is actually not a fedora. This is what you call a cowboy hat imported from Texas to the UK. The story behind this hat is that I had to carry it to the UK, and as not to crush it, I wore it on a plane on an international flight and got lots of funny looks.
Sounds authentic.
It is.
All right, so that might not be a fedora, but Fedora is what we're talking about today. We're going to take a look at this very interesting operating system and find out whether or not it's worth, putting a feather in its hat. I'm really stretching this. I'm sorry, guys. Fedoras are our hats, if you didn't know. But anyway, on to the official operating system, I guess, of Reddit headwear. James, what is Fedora, and why would somebody want to use it if they're already familiar with something like Kali Linux or maybe one of the other operating systems we've already covered?
So Fedora is...
This
Sorry?
one. Sorry, I'm just making the selection for today,
Oh, of course, of course. So Fedora is different than the operating systems that we've already checked out because it's not based on Debian or Arch. It's a third branch, if you will, of Linux. A large part of their kind of center seems to be around security. So they're based off of this thing that I'd actually never heard of before until I started researching, called Security Enhanced Linux, which was originally developed in part by the NSA, which is a series of patches to the Linux kernel to make it more secure. So Fedora comes with this installed by default, so it's a reasonably secure operating system as far as it goes out of the box. They have 3 variants, one for workstation, one for server, and one for IoT, I think. And Linus Torvalds uses it, so that's a fun fact.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good endorsement. One thing I will say though is the NSA has an interesting history of contributions to cryptographic or secure projects.
It depends what context they were doing it in, because sometimes they play nicely and they're like, yeah, look, here is did they make Ghidra, or was that UK agency?
They made Ghidra.
Yeah, so
we actually were
Ghidra...
there at so my little Redia team went to RSA when they released it, and we got stickers from one of the guys that wrote Ghidra, and he was super weird, but pretty cool, but super weird. And it freaked out our camera person because it was his turn to do an interview. And we're like, okay, I'll do the person from this tiny vendor. You'll do this person from that other tiny vendor. And then you do the guy from the NSA. And we made him try to do the interview. It was amazing. He was so nervous. So yeah, but the NSA made Ghidra, and it was a great tool that they released because it was an internal tool that then they released to everybody else and made it easier for security researchers to reverse engineer malware.
Yeah, so you see, I don't know enough about the context to tell if they're doing something like that where they're contributing towards the security community with something that they wrote to use themselves, or if, yes, they're trying to backdoor people, or if it's a mixture. I don't know. So
historically, it seems to be a mixture. The only thing that the InfoSec community is more suspicious of is when the NSA proposes and then insists on an encryption standard. I think we're just about done accepting helpful contributions to giant security encryption algorithms and stuff, because you guys mess around sometimes, and we're tired of that. So no more backdoors, but it is something to consider that the NSA has kind of a checkered history with this, but of course they do develop secure tools for themselves, and those tools generally are pretty reliable. And if you have people who understand this much about the Linux operating system taking a look at it, then it's pretty safe to assume that enough people have looked at it that hopefully there isn't some sort of weird backdoor. But I mean, you can say the same
Yeah.
thing about any
So
operating system. It's just like kind of funny that the NSA had a hand, I guess, in developing some parts of what was used in Fedora.
yeah, so just to, like, it's not just using Fedora to kind of go over, like, clear its name a little bit, and it looks like, from what I can see, that the NSA hasn't been involved directly, at least for a while, but that looks to be where its kind of roots were initially. But I think you can install this sort of system on most distributions of Linux, but it's unusual for it to come out of the box with it set up and configured to run like this. So.
Mm. Yeah, well, still, it's a really interesting departure from some of the other branches of Linux that we've already covered. If you're running Linux for the first time, overwhelmingly, you're going to be running Ubuntu. Or, something that has good community support that's able to get you through the early steps of adapting to using like a hybrid like GUI slash command line kind of existence when you're using Linux. Now, what's interesting is once you get beyond Debian-based operating systems like Kali Linux, Parrot Security OS, Ubuntu, like you start getting into more exotic branches of Linux, and that's where we covered a couple that weren't even Linux, like they were something completely different. So there's other operating systems out there that are for secure, useful for security research or are hardened or considered pretty secure. Depending on what your threat model is, of course, because they all have their strengths. And this is an interesting kind of new fork of Linux that we're checking out. That is not the same as really any of the other ones that we've covered. So I think that's really cool and interesting because we spent like 3 separate streams like covering basically Debian. I almost feel like we should just round it out and just do Debian. How do you feel about that, James?
Just do Debian. We could do, but there's also the possibility. I don't know. We could do Mint. Somebody recommended this on the Ubuntu stream, but Mint looks to be an extension of Ubuntu. And I'm like, do you really need that layer of abstraction? I don't know. I haven't ever looked at Mint, but that seems a little extreme to me. So I guess we could just do Debian, or we could look at Mint.
I think, well, you guys let us know in the comments. I think it'd be interesting. Like, we've shown all these evolutions of Debian, but just showing the core Debian operating system that all these other operating systems are based on, I think would be kind of cool, especially if we were able to harden it and also install all the kind of modules you would expect to see in like a more downstream distribution. So I don't know. It's an idea. If you guys want to see us do Debian, then I mean, it's going to be a very familiar installation if you've ever run, Kali Linux, or if you've ever run Ubuntu. It's just going to be a bit more bare bones, and you can take it in any direction you want, as you can kind of see by the operating systems that have evolved from it. So let us know. But this is different from all of that, and this is different from like OpenBSD and some of the other things that we've done. There's also somebody who is suggesting that we cover FreeBSD. How do you feel about that?
FreeBSD, I think, may be quite similar to OpenBSD, but we could try it, and I think things may run slightly easier on FreeBSD than they do on OpenBSD. I could be wrong about that.
As I understand, it's a more popular, or like more people use it than OpenBSD.
I think so, yeah.
Would be interesting to test out. So if you guys want to see us explore some of these other operating systems, I would love to continue this series. So just let us know if you're curious about that, and we'll check it out and see if it's something that's worth recommending. Because so far, every one of these we think has been worth recommending. None of these have been like a colossal fail or something that is just like abjectly terrible. There have been some that are more difficult. Yeah, there have been some that are a little bit more difficult to install, and maybe have some problems when you just install them straight from the website. But as we've got aggressive comments about that, I won't talk too much about Black Arch because I don't want to make those people mad. They really like it. I think the comment was, what kind of pot have you been smoking? It basically spoon feeds it RTFM and then something else to that degree. So I'm sorry. It's just not easy for beginners. Like if you're used to like having a lot of people be able to give you different perspectives on how to install the same thing and good community support, it's just not the same as Kali Linux. So But yeah, all right. So back to Fedora. This is a suggestion we got from somebody in our chat during live. So again, thank you to everyone who's made suggestions. We do listen to you. We consider all the suggestions you make, and we do try them out. So this is something we got from the people in our live chat. So yeah, that was really awesome that this was a suggestion that actually panned out to be an episode. So keep them coming and let us know what else you want to see. What's so funny, James? You got the giggles there, mate?
I suggested it.
Well, no, it actually came up in the chat 2 weeks ago, and we like kicked it, and then yeah.
Okay. I'll allow it. I'll allow it. I'll
Sorry.
allow them to have the credit, even though I thought of it separately.
Oh, okay. All right. So independent lines of thought, because we actually had it on our calendar that Fedora was one of the ones we were going to do based on the suggestions we got. So while James is trying to denigrate our fans and say that their voices don't matter, I insist they do. Sorry, guys. James just doesn't think that,
I'll allow it.
All right. So where would we even get started with Fedora? And again, so it's something that's reasonably secure. What are some of the main differences we can expect? Just like if you were going to explain to someone coming from, for example, Ubuntu, what are the main 4 or 5 differences in Fedora? Just having used it or installed a package in it, or otherwise virtualized the environment.
Okay, so just before we touch on that, briefly, I want to correct myself. There are actually 5 editions that they released. There's Workstation, Server, Core OS, which is a minimal bare bones thing used for cloud computing, apparently. The IoT version, which I mentioned, and Silverblue, which is an immutable desktop, which I know little about it. Immutable means that you can't change it. So I guess it's for container-based workflows, is what this says.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So anyhow, so there's that. What else? It's the parent OS of Red Hat, but Red Hat was discontinued, so now it's Red Hat Enterprise or something like that. And based off of that, there is CentOS. So it's the parent operating system of a couple other things that are pretty unique. CentOS is used for kind of networking stuff, I think, usually. Am I right in that?
Yeah, although I've also heard it referenced as a security-related operating system where some researchers have uses for CentOS.
Okay.
I personally have not, but it has come up on the list of other operating systems security researchers have mentioned.
And then I know very little about Red Hat or Red Hat Enterprise Linux or whatever it's called.
Yeah, me too, actually.
So I remember there was the one time that I saw it and it was running on some airplane, so I thought that was pretty interesting. But so apart from that, let me try and open up a new Firefox window here. So if you want to go over to my screen, I just have the Fedora homepage up now. So as you can see, there's the 3 main editions here, and then the emerging Fedora editions.
Whoa.
The other ones there. So container-based workflow, blah, blah, blah. But for this video, we are just going to go over the workstation. So you would go here, grab the DVD ISO here, and it looks like you can run it on a Raspberry Pi as well, which is pretty interesting because it compiles for ARM. So you could do that if you like. What else is there? Da-da. You can verify the download, of course. So all looks good. I already have the ISO downloaded, so I can close this out after we look around and make sure there's not anything else. Okay, so there's a lot of documentation here. Fedora, the reason I know Fedora is because it comes bundled with the Cubes OS operating system. It's one of the default sort of containers that you can create, and it's what the base what do they call it? I don't remember what they call it off the top of my head, but the base system that you launch the other VMs from runs on by default. So the Cubes OS team seems to have some trust in place for Fedora, and the other thing is that it also has a hardening wrapper around it. So there seems to definitely be a security focus within the Fedora developer community.
Yeah, I also constantly see it popping up on lists of best hacker OSs to try. So it seems to be pretty consistently represented with people talk about security-focused operating systems because it has a lot of advantages, and yeah, it seems to be relatively easy to install and easy to use packages inside.
Yeah, it's actually like really easy to install, and a lot of the packages that you may have to fiddle around to get working on Ubuntu, for instance, will just install on here through the default package manager. So that was interesting, I thought. But should we get started making a VM?
Yeah, let's do it. So, per usual, let's go through our default shtick about using virtualization. If this doesn't work for you, or if there's a problem with virtualization, you can always stick this on a USB stick. You can install it to a drive. These are all perfectly legitimate ways to do this, but we're going to be doing this in a virtual machine because it's easy to tear down and to start up, and also it's free. So we're going to be using VirtualBox. VirtualBox comes with pain. That's what makes it free. Sometimes things need to be configured properly in ways that are a little confusing, and other processes might throw weird errors that aren't very descriptive. It can be a little bit intimidating, but I recommend you learn to use it because it's not as complicated as it looks. And the alternative is something like Parallels. I use Parallels because they gave it to me for free because I constantly complain that it should be free for students. They just made it free for me, so I would stop complaining. But guess what? I still think it should be free for students. So until they do make it free for students, then we currently recommend basically anything that's free. Like VirtualBox is a great example. But I think there was like VMware or like something else that somebody had mentioned.
VMware has something.
Some other like free platforms. So yeah, like use whatever virtualization platform like is free and allows you to get the stuff spun up. But VirtualBox will work just fine. Now on to the reasons why VirtualBox might work for seemingly no reason and throw you weird, confusing errors, James.
Right. So there's a couple of things that will work or that you need to make sure across all host operating systems, and the obvious one is that you need to make sure virtualization is enabled inside of your BIOS. Inside of Windows specifically, there's a thing called the Windows Virtualization Platform or something like that. It's a feature that you have to disable that gets automatically enabled if you install WSL, and I guess there are other ways that it can be enabled as well if it does that. So that seems to only affect some operating systems, even more weirdly, but if you have problems like random kernel panics, that may be something to consider and look into. The errors that you can get within VirtualBox are usually very unhelpful. And it's just like, yes, there is a kernel panic, and I have no idea why it's doing this. And all the other errors look similar or the same. So you can spend a long time Googling occasionally if you have a problem, which is unfortunate, but it's the way it is.
Yeah, so one thing is we've covered like Windows Subsystem for Linux. Spoiler alert, we hated it. But by installing and trying it, you're actually accidentally disabling using VirtualBox for virtualization. So you'll have to go in and disable another setting in order to enable it again. Is that correct?
For some operating systems.
For some operating systems.
For like, I think it was OpenBSD that happened. But then for other operating systems, I didn't have that issue. So it was, I don't know. It's something to consider. If you have a problem, that's one of the troubleshooting steps that you should look at, basically. With that said,
I think that covers basically everything. Yeah, it's just sometimes like virtual machines can be a little bit frustrating because they take some practice getting used to, and yeah, they're very abstract. So it takes a little bit of understanding to get used to tools like VirtualBox. But if you're a beginner, getting familiar with setting up and tearing down virtual machines on something free like VirtualBox is an invaluable skill because it allows you to learn and try out a lot of things that frankly would just be kind of a pain to install and then maintain over a long period of time on your hard disk. Not to mention waste a lot of space.
Yep. So, shall we get started?
Yeah, let's do it. But remember to make it like it's for old people. Make it huge.
It's already huge.
I'm sorry, that's tiny. I'm looking at it right now,
tiny.
and it's tiny. Yeah, it's tiny.
Don't lie to me. I can't make it bigger reasonably.
I'm looking at it, and it's tiny. Are you magnifying?
This is as big as it usually is, and you don't complain.
Okay, because I can't read like any of the settings.
Okay.
And I'm looking at a large monitor, so anybody on mobile will be totally unable to see.
This is unfortunate. I made it think my monitor is 1080p. Which usually does it, and the scaling breaks things significantly, so it's not worth doing. So I can use the magnification thing if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. Just because, like, for people that haven't done this before, if this is our first stream they're watching, they literally cannot see the action, I guess. So
I
if
have
we
no
can,
idea what you can see right now. Let me just make that clear.
I see a. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Now we see. That's great. That looks great.
Oh,
Cool.
I broke it. Hold on. Why can't I set? Okay, it's either
Yeah.
it's like 200% or 100%. There's no in between. Okay,
Cool.
right. So we're gonna hit the big old new button, and then
Beautiful.
we're gonna type in a name, and I'm gonna call it Fedora 1 because I already have a Fedora machine.
Hmm.
And you can see here it's automatically detected that we have Linux, and that inside of that we are 64-bit Fedora. Yay!
Which is cool.
So
That actually isn't just some like generic descriptor that like you have to infer is Fedora.
exactly, yeah. So because it's like one of the parent operating systems, it's very nice. So if we get next, then we get to the RAM setting, which I'm just gonna stick at 8 GB. It doesn't need nearly that much. It's a pretty lightweight operating system, but yeah, just to make sure everything runs smoothly within the video, hopefully. If we next through a few times, it's going to ask us to select the hard disk file type, which we can just leave as default. I'm assuming these are probably like legacy options, right? I've never actually looked into them.
Yeah, I always just select the default one. There's unless like the tutorial I'm following calls for something else.
Okay, fair enough. So let's leave it at that. Now we're going to select dynamically allocated here, which means that we're only going to actually use the space on our disk as we fill it up within the virtual machine up to the maximum that we'll set in a second. This is slightly slower than if we used a fixed size disk, but that would immediately right now take up the entire space on our disk, which if you're creating like a 64 gig virtual disk, that can take up like a lot of space on your computer pretty fast if you're creating multiple VMs. So dynamically allocated is usually the way I go.
Yeah, compromise being speed versus space.
Yeah. So then it's going to ask you for the location and the capacity, which I'm just going to whack at 64 gigabytes. That's a lot for an initial install, but again, if you're planning to actually use this, you could fill that up probably pretty quickly, installing packages and stuff. Day-to-day usage if you were doing that. So then we can see that it has popped up here as Fedora 1. And what we can then do is go into the settings. And
Is it the virtual drive time
it is
or processor?
nearly virtual drive time. First of all, I'm going to give it cores because I want it to go faster and not be choppy. So this probably isn't essential. It'll probably work with 1 or 2 will definitely be fine, but I have more cores available, so just to make sure everything runs smoothly, I'm going to leave it there.
Can you scoot it over just a little bit? I can't quite
sorry.
see. There you go. Sweet.
My perception of what you can see is pretty warped right now. So then we're going to go over here. We're going to select the big empty button. And then we select this little disk button over here, and you can see it's already coming up for me. But if you hit choose disk file and you navigate to your ISO and select that, then you should be ready to close out of the settings. And I'm now going to disable the magnification because that's all the small VirtualBox settings that we have to mess with.
Cool. And if that helped you out, by the way, then please let James know by saying thank you in the chat, and we'll continue to make sure we magnify it. If you guys don't care or if it's annoying, then also let us know, and we won't do it anymore. But I sometimes watch these on mobile, and I know they're impossible to see on the phone sometimes, so just trying to look out for anybody on their phones.
Gosh, imagine being a mobile user. It's just a joke. It's just a joke.
Yeah, please don't leave us mean comments.
Stay on the stream. Okay, so then we're gonna hit the start button, and it's gonna just confirm which disk we're gonna use. It's a hard choice. It's just a hard choice. And look at this. We get our options. Troubleshooting. It's the white highlighted thing. It's not very clear which thing you actually have selected here, but I'm just navigating with arrow
Wow,
keys.
James, looks like it's time for scaled mode because I can't see what you're doing at all.
Wonderful.
Your favorite.
I'll do that. I'll actually. Am I gonna leave it? I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna use the magnifier for now because
Oh, gross. Yeah, I mean, whatever.
in a bit this one actually scales correctly out of the box, so it'll look nice rather than doing that thing. But yeah, so as you can see, let me let it capture my mouse. So it looks pretty weird when you're selecting between them, but basically the white highlighted one is what you're selecting. So you either start it or you test the media and start it. So that's the default. We're going to test the media and start it, which I think is generally what you do. What's the escape key? That's the escape key. And then in a minute here, things should start to happen.
And this is just like testing. Oh, okay. So it's just verify testing before it mounts it.
Yes,
Cool.
which doesn't take very long. So why the heck not? And it's the default. So always stick with defaults. Well, no, that's probably bad advice. But as far as installing operating systems, that's been most of the time what I do. But we're going to change defaults here in a minute, so it doesn't always apply, of course. But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to go like messing with settings you don't understand and like enable some option that's just like open but not something you're actually ever going to use.
Exactly. The other cool thing that we can do here in a minute is we can turn on disk encryption, which will be pretty nice for that, added security from our hacker operating systems, as we're calling them. Even though this is more of just a kind of a security based operating system rather than, I mean, you can use it for pen testing certainly, as we'll see in a bit. But right on then, we are into a live OS.
Awesome.
And you could either try Fedora just to mess around with it, but what we're going to do here is install to hard drive.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I didn't notice this before, but does the icon for Fedora look very much as though Facebook is melting?
I guess it kind of does.
Okay, because I was like shook for a second that this was like Facebook OS, and then I was like, oh wait, no, Fedora's just like a squished and melted version.
Exactly, precisely. Wonderful. Okay, petition to rename Fedora to melting Facebook OS. Right, so
Face Melt OS would be a metal as hell operating system. Right?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to select English United States because I am a rebel in the country I'm in.
Good.
But it auto-detected that I was in the UK, so I tried to set it to that. Here, it's correctly detected my keyboard layout, my time zone, and all we have to do for partitioning, if we want to leave it default, is just go in here and hit done. If you wanted to do manual partitioning, you could go through and mess with things a little bit here. And here's the cool thing: we can encrypt our data if we hit the big check mark.
I can't. Sorry, I can't see anything on that now. The text is too small. Sorry.
Ah, shameful.
Okay, cool. Now I can see everything. All right,
yes,
cool.
We're encrypting our data. Yay! And then
I would like to make additional space available. The hell's that?
I think that's if you want to like leave some space unallocated on the hard drive.
Oh, okay. So if you don't want to take up the entire amount of disk space.
Yeah, but for us, as we're just like installing onto the full virtual disk, we can leave it like that. And then I think we should be good to go. So we can hit the big done button on the top left, set our disk encryption passphrase. What should it be?
I mean, something really secure like password 12345678 password.
Okay, I prefer Fedora, actually.
That's great.
Okay,
wait,
perfect.
They don't have a limit?
No.
Like, you can't just... Ugh.
This password fails the dictionary check. It is too systemic.
They do have a limit. I was going to be like, this thing says it's a security-focused OS, yet at the same time it doesn't even want to have like password limits on like setting stupid passwords. All right.
Well, it'll let you do it.
Yeah, but it'll at least yell at you and inform you that like your decision is terrible and you should feel bad for it.
Exactly. I think that's the best approach. So after that, we have everything set up. So we hit the big blue button in the bottom right. So
all right. as you do this, can you either set the virtualization screen size to a larger setting, or in Fedora just set the resolution? Because I still like you can zoom all you like, but like most of the screen is still like designed for Yeah, okay, I can see everything. That's great.
Nice and ugly for you. Okay, so this is going to
Yes,
take a minute,
that's
but
cool. So that was a very, very simple install. Like it really didn't have a lot of like settings we needed to manually select, and like most of the choices were pretty straightforward, which that's not something you can say about absolutely every operating system. Some of them have a lot of like seemingly very dire choices you need to make in order to not like overwrite the wrong thing, or like otherwise just set things up in a way that might not be how you want it to be. But this seems like, unless you really go just blindly clicking things, it's pretty difficult to mess up this installation.
yeah, if you didn't change any settings there and you literally just went into the partitioning thing, hit done, it would just have installed on the entire disk without encryption and it would have worked. So it's
Right.
it's really easy to set up.
Yeah. So that being said, if you were doing this not on a virtual system, and you were like installing this on your system, there would be an extra step of making sure to select the correct partition. But we're not doing that today, so you can just go through all the default options, and boom, it's just ready to go. So I also liked the fact that the live environment looked pretty clean, and it seems like you could just get started, just right here.
Yeah, definitely. If you just wanted to mess around with Fedora, that's a good thing. The one thing like notable that we will be doing today is completely not updating because for whatever reason, the package, even though I downloaded it or the ISO, even though I downloaded it like yesterday, wanted to do like 400 updates. So, um, if you are actually using this, make sure you update it. But in a bit, we're not going to do that because we'd be here all day.
So once we do have Fedora installed, you mentioned that the built-in package manager is pretty robust when it comes to the amount of packages it has that you would want to install. Um, I mean, are there a lot of security-focused packages already installed in Fedora? Like the kind of things that hackers would look for, like aircrack ng,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
So the two things that I tried to install were like the two things that just came to mind while I was messing around with it were Aircrack NG and Wireshark, and
Mm,
both of those I just did sudo DNF install Wireshark or Aircrack NG, and it just worked.
mhm.
So that was a pretty nice surprise to me. I didn't really expect that. So yes, it's probably in terms of binaries the most extensive um, out of the box thing I've seen from a sort of parent OS compared to, like, if you were using Kali or Black Arch, I would expect that. But
Mm,
in terms of like, if you were using Arch, you could build it from source. But if you're doing Ubuntu, that wouldn't even work by default. I don't think.
mm.
Aircrack and G and Wireshark, I don't think they're in the default repository list.
Yeah, they might be. They might not be. There are certainly things like Ergeddon would not be, because those are going to be found in branches like Parrot Security OS. But even like Kali doesn't have that. Black Arch does, but Parrot Security OS does, but Kali does not. So, yeah, it's kind of weird, like knowing which operating systems are going to choose to support a particular like popular hacker package, like something like BetterCap or like other things that people within the hacking space definitely know about, and it is a very popular tool. But if you go outside the niche of like Wi-Fi hacking, then not as many people know about it. So it'll be interesting to see which ones are actually supported, and how deep they go down the rabbit hole of actually like making sure to have a series of tools that are popular that people use in the infosec and like hacker space. Like
Exactly.
Metasploit, we'll have Metasploit. I guess we can check that too. Although that's a huge
We can
package,
check.
but at least we'll know if it's there.
We can check. Right. So I think we're through the bulk of the actual installation now. So hopefully this line should start speeding across in a minute.
Oh, I see. So Fedora is supposed to be like an infinity symbol tipped on its side, which is like part of it that makes an F highlighted, but it just happens to look like almost at a glance like very, very similar to the Facebook logo.
Is that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah, it took me a second.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I see now. It's grayed out. Okay. All right. All right.
I mean, yeah, the main difference is that like they made the bottom like streamlined, like Like it would be more aerodynamic.
Yeah. So the other thing we can talk about for a minute is that I think it's pretty interesting. So the way that Red Hat Enterprise Linux actually works is it's based off of Fedora, but then Red Hat Enterprise Linux, RHEL as it's commonly referred to, is it's for the commercial market. So while you can use it for free and it's open source, you cannot use it in a commercial environment for free. I think you have to pay a licensing fee or something to Red Hat. But as a result of that, there's actually a commercial enterprise behind this that's pretty invested in making sure Fedora is a good OS.
That's nice.
And,
so just because they rely on it, they're not going to let that project be abandoned.
Yeah, so it's even though it seems like, I mean, I don't know how many users Linux operating systems tend to have, but apparently in February 2016 it had an estimated 1.2 million users.
That's a lot. That's a good amount. So wait, do you know the story with Red Hat Linux? Because like I've heard all sorts of stuff, but I'm not totally clear on like what's
I
happening
have
with them.
no idea. No idea.
Well, if someone does know, please let us know in the comments, because I've heard there's drama and I don't know exactly what's up with it.
Let's see if I can dig up the dirt real quick.
Looks like we're also so close to being done with the install.
Yes, it's taking longer as it always does when recording.
Always.
But just to be expected. Ooh. There we go. So Fedora is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. Go ahead and reboot your system. So if you hit the big finish installation button, it's going to take us back to the live OS. So what we're going to do here is just power off. Hit suspend. I just closed it. Okay, calm down, Red Hat. Not Red Hat, Fedora. Same thing, really. Right, so briefly what we're going to do is go into the settings there. Let me try to make it look at what I'm doing. Go into the storage tab. Hello. Man, we need a better solution.
Yeah, I know.
So select that, the live CD, not remove attachment, that's the wrong thing, but go to the right, hit the button, and remove the disk file.
Got it.
And unzoom, hit OK, double click it to start it, or hit the start button, whatever, it does the same thing.
Right. And of course, if you fail to do this, then you'll just be booting back into the same live operating system and you will be confused.
Yes.
Maybe you'll even install it again.
I installed it twice. Does it work doubly good? Watch it not work.
That would be amazing.
Okay,
Ah,
good.
sweet.
And we're going to enter our secure password of Fedora there. And this is the disk encryption stage.
It looks so much like Facebook. It looks like we're logging into Facebook OS.
Facebook OS. Don't tempt them. They'll make one.
They have.
Going back to your drama, the only thing I can see right now is that apparently late last year, CentOS is dying, and there will now only be CentOS Stream. I'm not even sure what the difference is.
Interesting.
So CentOS was acquired by Red Hat in 2014.
Yeah, this is a really... I just don't know a lot about Red Hat. Just I know that it's a big deal for a lot of enterprise people. And I know that like it is one of the commercial fortes into Linux that like has a lot of support and a lot of people rely on. But at the same time, it seems like there's also like some issues with like patents and other stuff that make it. For example, like I was reading that they don't have like MP3, or they didn't for a while have MP3 support because of like patent issues, and you would have to pay like royalties to like play effectively like use anything that decoded MP3s because it was like a proprietary format. Just like stuff like that was just like very silly.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing that kind of Red Hat seems like a departure from what Linux usually is, because it's usually sort of open source, free to use in most circumstances, including commercial, but Red Hat you have to pay to use it in commercial circumstances. So that sounds like an interesting problem to license without impeding the open source aspect of it. But
I will say that Red Hat Enterprise Linux also, like, I can see that since like 2016, it's been available for free to developers. So that's pretty cool. Like, and you know, even if it's got some quirks with it being like a commercial project, it's still really great that it's available for free to people that want to use it for non-enterprise purposes or like professional purposes, I guess.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're into the OS now. So we just have to hit this button that says Start Setup at the bottom here. I'm going to turn off location services and automatic problem reporting because, I don't know, I like to be like that. And I'm not going to connect any accounts. What should our name be?
Let's see. Let's make it Windows XP. Good.
Nice.
Yeah.
And our password is going to be a secure Fedora.
Calling you weak again.
Yeah.
Sassy operating system.
Brutal.
All right, so the first thing we need to do is change the background to the Windows XP background so things make sense.
Oh, it's upset. Well, it's easy to do.
There we go. Cool.
And the way you actually get into stuff is you hit the big... Okay, it's trying to give me a tour, but I don't want it today. Oh, no. Oh, no. Go away. It's too big. I can't.
Press escape. It'll scare it.
It's too large. I'm just gonna hide it. And forget it's there. I can't exit it because of the weird scaling. But yeah, so the way that you get to your apps is you hit the activities button in the top, and you have applications along the right, and you can just type to search anything else. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we open a web browser? Oh, you're on it. Okay.
I'm trying.
It's shy.
Yes, the scaling is doing funky things.
Oh, there we go. Firefox.
There we go.
All right, so XP background.
Ooh, background.
Good, good. I'll know it the second I see it.
And the networking worked out of the box, so that's pretty nice.
That's beautiful.
Google wants to steal all my information immediately without delay.
They're just like, hi, please tell us exactly who you are.
Yes.
What is that?
I'm about to see if I can do DuckDuckGo faster and actually get to what I'm trying to do. I typed it. Oh, I didn't type in .com. Fine. I'll allow it.
Oh, are you going to get mad that Google grabbed it anyway? Okay, well, that time you did, and Google's just like, idiot. You meant to go to Google? Well, let's take you there anyway.
I'm sorry, James. I can't let you do that.
Oh, you want to go to DuckDuckGo? Let's do a Google search for DuckDuckGo.
Okay.
What are these knockoff Windows XP backgrounds?
I'm struggling right now.
There we go. There we go. All right. Bliss
takes me
image.
back.
I didn't know that the image was called Bliss.
Is it?
Yeah.
When did you learn this?
One time we went by where it was taken, I guess, and like it was like a big to-do about it. It's out of like California's wine country, so we were driving to San Francisco one time and we just looked out the window and it was just the Windows XP background, and we're like, oh my gosh, that was nice.
Very nice. Okay, now that that's done, we can get rid of this horrendous scaling.
Okay.
The web browser.
Fine.
And add a picture.
Now, add picture. Downloads.
From our downloads. Please. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's a success.
Okay. All right. Good.
Don't worry about that thing.
This is beautiful. All right. So we've gotten our Windows XP Fedora systems set up. For anybody just getting here, did you know that you could do this?
Did I know that I could change the desktop background?
No, I mean for anybody who just joined our stream and is like intensely confused by like what is going on. Yeah. So here you go. Fedora XP.
negative years old right now. Right. So, can I close this? Oh wait, I can close it.
Yeah.
Yes. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that they flipped
So,
it. They're like, it is copyright to have the X button on the left side. Make the X button on the right side.
exactly. So, if we open up a terminal, you get this is a little bit of a different styling to the other ones, which I kind of like it. It makes me feel like a hacker man. So, uh, yeah, standard terminal. What do we want to install first?
Obviously, the Hunator.
The Hunator first? Are you sure about that? That may take
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So, we're gonna have to download the binary here because what could we use to download the Hunator? We could use Snap, but I don't know if I can be bothered. Hold on. What are the wonderful things that we've done? Yeah, so we could install Snap, but I'm not entirely sure how to do that, so I don't want to try and run through it. Or we could try and compile it. What are you feeling? You want to try and compile it, or do you just want to download the binary?
Is Fedora blessed with the ability to compile Rust?
Yeah, it should be. I would hope so.
Then let's do that. I also had a question. So, with the Hunator being a serial monitor, do you think that it could be expanded to also act as an interface to a MicroPython board that's using the same hardware, like an ESP8266?
And do what?
Basically, like give you access over the serial terminal to a MicroPython REPL prompt so that you can run programs or program in MicroPython through it.
Program in MicroPython through a serial monitor.
Mm-hmm. That's how you program MicroPython. You plug it in, you select the serial monitor, and you go over like screen or something, and then you just run Python line by line on it. Or you could run Python files.
Okay, so you're just connecting to an interpreter.
Yeah.
It may work out of the box if the settings are correct.
Okay. I might try it because we've been talking a little bit about the future of some of these like Spacetune projects and how some of them might use like MicroPython or CircuitPython and how exciting those languages are. But the big hurdle is getting it on a device, plugging it in, and then having a good serial monitor to just connect to it and run basic programs. So something to talk about. But anyway.
Something to talk about. Anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm just installing Git first. So that's sudo dnf install Git. And
what is DNF? Do not fornicate? Sorry, what is DNF?
It's the package manager. I don't think it...
What does it mean?
I tried to see if it had any significance, but I don't know if it does. I think it's just DNF.
Okay.
Didn't finish race.
Go on.
Did not finish. Anyhow, in the meantime, I'll start installing that.
All right.
And... grab Rust.
I'm still on this kick to find out exactly what it means.
I looked for all of 30 seconds and I didn't find out. So I guess that there must just be no meaning.
Oh, dandified yum is the next generation of yum.
Ah, dandified yum.
Yep, because it's supposedly the successor of yum.
That's interesting. I knew they used yum previously, but okay.
I don't know how that makes sense, but that is the answer.
Wonderful. Well, we have Git installed, so now I'm just running this fancy one-liner from the Rustlang site to install the Rust compiler. And after that, we get to clone the project.
So this is a little bit more of an advanced installation than the typical thing you might like get cloned from GitHub. This requires, in this case, we're going to be compiling it because it's a Rust program. So yeah, a lot of the other stuff we could do would be easier, but I wanted to start out with one that's a little bit more tricky just to see how easy it is to do something that's a little bit above what we would do on the average day with Fedora. Because so James, I don't want to hurt you, but I don't think people install the Hunator like absolutely every day. But maybe some people do.
I could cry.
I know.
So if you were just wanting to install the Hunator, the easiest way to do it, unless you already have Snap or something installed, would just be to grab the binary. But that would be like the quick and dirty way to
Mm-hmm.
get things working. But we have since installed Rust, so I'm just going to set up the shell with the path variable instead of starting a new shell because I'm lazy like that. Grab the link, and then we should just be able to, I'll go to the desktop, and then we can git clone the link. So now we have the source code. We can go into there, and we can cargo build. So in the meantime, while that's figuring out how that works, I'm going to try to connect my Andromeda D author.
Yes, and for
Oh,
anybody who, oh, what happened?
VirtualBox.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
gonna
and
see.
for, oh no, what? Oh, right, you're adding the USB port or forwarding
Trying.
it. That's always fun. Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know what the Andromeda deauthor is, this is a specific hardware version of the Wi-Fi deauthor project that we worked on with our friend Stefan, aka Spacehoon, and it also has the ability to mount a special directional Wi-Fi antenna. So we built it in some really cool features like a signal detector like Fox Hunter, so you're able to track down the location of any Wi-Fi signal, which is really super cool. So, but of course, if you want to use it, you need a serial monitor. So that's what the Hunator is for.
Okay, so we had an error. That's always fun.
Oh, good.
And I think we are missing. I think we are just missing default like build tools that we should have installed. So maybe somebody will tell me what I need to install. wdev.
Yeah, by the way, what James just demonstrated is the correct way of solving a small technical problem. Before firing off a message to my DMs, please do what James just did and see if the first search result is the answer.
I mean, this is like usually on Debian based things, I think it's like build essentials that you need to have installed, but on Fedora, I don't use it very much. So I am not entirely sure. Yeah, so as you can see, it's not finding the package. But if we tell it that it must be for Fedora.
Do you want to copy it from the error message?
I think I got as much info as I could from...
Well, I was just going to say the package name from the error message.
Yeah, I did.
Huh?
It's just yeah, what I did is I copied the whole thing in there and just whacked Fedora Rust.
Mm-hmm.
But
oh no, sorry. What I meant was like copying the exact package name, because I think you copied it from the error message and where it told you that you needed to install something. So there might have been a small difference.
Okay, maybe they say that this is a thing. I'll do that if that doesn't work. That's a reasonable suggestion.
Yeah, for example, you were trying to install leave devs, whatever dev. The one that it said you were missing was -sys, SYS. So you didn't try to install
Yeah, I think that may have been a separate... I think that was like the crate it was trying to compile, though, rather than the package it was missing. Because sometimes when you're compiling certain crates inside of Rust, you need certain dependencies. So hopefully that solved the problem. Yeah, okay. So cool. If you're compiling the Hunator in Rust, you need systemd devel installed, apparently.
Which is not what the error message says.
No. But that's like, this is if you were compiling a lot, I suspect this is something that you would have already figured out you need to install, whereas this is a fresh install, so we don't have a lot of these sort of dependencies that you may usually have installed already. And also, it may have even installed that if I just ran an update, but we haven't because it would take a while. So
Yeah,
here
I
we
do have
are,
to say though,
suffering the
like
consequences.
this is almost like a sprint to see like how far we can get through like a discussion, then installing, and then like getting things up and running. And so far, like Fedora's performing pretty admirably well with getting up and running with some of the harder things to do with the Linux system that take a little bit more work or installation. Like it's still clocking in great because we haven't hit our time yet, and we're at the point where we're like compiling Rust programs. We're like sometimes we're at the point where we're making apologies for the operating system not being able to compile Rust programs. So like I still think that like Fedora's proven itself to be a very usable operating system compared to something that might, like take a little bit more setup to get working. Because if we're, I mean, for some of the like free, wasn't free BSD or Open BSD that like
OpenBSD, no?
just like straight up like doesn't do Rust.
Yes, it was.
Highly
It's
offensive.
not Linux,
I'm sorry, James.
and I was deeply upset. But this does, so that's pretty nice. And in case anybody wants to complain at me, I just did cargo build rather than a release build because it's the packages or the things are going to be compiled with less optimization, but they're going to compile faster, and this is relatively time sensitive. So if we now just grab it from the target, debug Hunitor, and put it on the desktop, then we have it there, and I think it may already be executable, but just to make sure, I'll chmod +x Hunitor and sudo /Hunitor.
Cool. There's that chicken we
And
love to see.
there is the chicken. My serial port is not found. That's deeply upsetting.
Did you plug the thing in? Oh, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, let me try unplugging it and replugging it after I have the filter set. And then maybe VirtualBox will capture. Yeah, nice. Okay. So what I did is I set a filter inside of VirtualBox for the kind of generic looking serial chip that most of these things have. And when I next plugged it in, it captured it and stuck it into the VM. So if we just select 0 there and then say help.
Whoa, and it works.
Yeah. Do you want to run any commands? Do you care to run any commands?
Yeah, do it. Do you want to do? Well, actually, it's hard because the demo mode obscures the MAC address, but it doesn't obscure the name of your Wi-Fi network. So we still try not to do it because Michael hates blurring stuff. But
enough.
we can always do like a beacon.
Okay, let's.
You want to?
I don't know how we're actually
Starbucks?
going to demonstrate that works, but if you want to give me a command to run, I'll be happy to do that.
Do help-s. And then, so everything should be there. So it should be beacon dash ss. What is it? SSID. Yeah, beacon dash SSID. And then what is Starbucks Wi-Fi over there?
Lord knows.
What?
No idea.
You've
I don't
never
go to Starbucks.
Oh my. Okay.
I mean,
just
I don't go to
just try
Starbucks in the UK.
Capital S for Starbucks, and then or actually no, I think it's Google Starbucks. So just try capital G Google Starbucks. There's a space in between them and put quotes around it. So we're creating a fake network. Okay, so then if you look at the other optional arguments,
You can see like some of the panes that I have coded, but I haven't merged yet here yet. Okay.
And then do -auth, AUTH. So do you know what that command does?
Is this setting the security of the network?
Nope. Wrong.
Nope.
What this actually is going to do is it's
thought
going
wrong.
to scan for devices attempting to authenticate. So if your phone, which you claim has never been to Starbucks before, has actually connected to Starbucks in the past, it's going to rat you out, James. So do it.
Man, I'm looking at my phone right now. Hold on.
Cool. So it's now, on your phone, you should be able to see Google Starbucks. And if you were to connect to Google Starbucks, or if your phone automatically recognized it and probed it to see if it was connectable, you would see your phone's hopefully obscured MAC address show up on the screen. So this is how Stefan and I have been able to do certain attacks that are based on knowing a network that someone's connected to before. And this monitoring feature, there you go. And look
I
at that.
connected to it on purpose.
Yeah.
But
Stefan, thankfully, did make the filter, so it's filtering out your phone's MAC address. And your phone's probably also throwing up a temporary fake MAC address. But you can see that somebody is attempting to connect to this MAC address, to this fake network that we've created, and that allows a hacker to know, hey, if I put up basically a real version of this network, I can force this device to connect because it recognizes and trusts this network. And maybe that could be like an attack where we're popping up a phishing page, a man-in-the-middle attack. There's a lot of kind of opportunities here for, really messing somebody up once you know which networks their phone will automatically connect to without them doing anything. So, okay, I think that that's actually our time. So we can't go too much further into this, but is there anything else you want to show off about Fedora before we close out, or do you feel like we've gone through most of the essentials?
really quickly, just to demonstrate, sudo
Let's go
DNF
back to your screen
install,
then. Yeah.
aircrack, ng, that'll work. Same thing with what you call it? Wireshark will also work. I'm not sure about Airgidden, but
Let's try it.
lots of pre-installed stuff. I would be surprised if Airgidden worked.
Me too. This is how you can kind of see if this is a hacker OS that's focused on really like active package curation, or if it's like,
Is that how you spell it? Airgidden?
ARDEDDON. Yeah. So that one's not installed. But again, we typically see Airgedden on operating systems like parent Security OS. So it would be a little bit unusual to see this on like a parent operating system. That would be pretty weird. But
it's already impressive that it has Wireshark and Aircrack on here.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, at least.
Yeah, you can definitely get started with some basic stuff on here. Can you try BetterCap as well? It's the last thing I want to try. I won't make you do anything else. If it BetterCap's one of those wobblers where hey, it does have BetterCap.
Nice.
Color me impressed. All right. So I have to say, I am some of these packages I didn't expect to be in Fedora. BetterCap is not for developing. You're not going to develop a website with BetterCap. These are not just regular tools. These are security tools that are used for hacking networks, hacking Bluetooth, and doing all sorts of other nefarious stuff. So it's really cool, frankly, that they're installed into, or they're supported in just the repository, and you can install them very easily. So, okay, as a takeaway from Fedora, I have to say I'm very pleased with this operating system. James, how do you feel like this stacks up next to some of our other operating systems like Manjaro or Ubuntu or some of the other ones we've covered?
I feel like it's pretty apples and oranges compared to most of the other things we've covered, because again, this is a parent operating system on a separate branch, and the fact that this is so smooth to use in a desktop experience is pretty nice, because I run this OS inside of Cubes and I have no trouble with it. It's pretty smooth, it's pretty lightweight. So I would say, I don't know how efficient this is compared to Manjaro or Arch, but it seems like it's a little bit more lightweight than Ubuntu, at least. And in terms of tools that you can install off the back, I think this is better than Ubuntu by default. Correct me if I'm wrong, but not as good as the sort of security-based OSs or pen testing-based OSs, I should say, like Parrot OS or Kali or BlackArch. But you can already install some basic stuff. It's pretty easy to develop on and install. As we saw, we could compile things from source pretty easily. I don't know. I like it. I would use it.
Yeah, I would, in my list, I would rank this around the Ubuntu or Manjaro or other user-friendly, larger community of supports, all the kind of things I'm looking for somebody to have a good experience with Linux without it just being something you have to bring up in conversation constantly because it was so hard that you feel like you need to let other people know. Sorry, Arch people. I don't mean to call you out. But, this is one of those operating systems where a beginner could hop on, find most of the things they need, and find the community support to get started with most things you would expect to do on a Linux distribution. So I think that in and of itself is a really good reason to check out Fedora as an operating system if you're interested and if you're looking for something that just makes a good daily driver OS with great support, a good community, and a focus on security.
Yeah, just to add to that a little bit, it's the install process here, as you guys saw, was really easy. I would say it was probably up there with Manjaro and Ubuntu in terms of how fast we installed that and how easy it was to install it. And the security is probably above Arch and Manjaro. And in terms of the kind of project's devotion to security, I would say it's probably not, like, they're not as stuck up about it, at least as OpenBSD is, but they use secure Linux or whatever they called it. I don't remember off the top of my head, and that's implemented by default, which is something that we haven't seen on any of the other operating systems we looked at. So it's pretty interesting, and in terms of security, it's pretty good. In terms of usability, really good. You can install most of the packages that we couldn't get on other operating systems that aren't security focused. So it's pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Awesome.
I like it.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing this with us today. Again, I knew very little about Fedora before we even started the stream today, so I've learned a lot. Like, legitimately, like, I know more about Fedora now than I did in like years of like passively looking it up and be like, oh, sounds interesting, and then like not really going any further. So I'm glad we finally took the plunge and tried it out. Thank you. Of course to James, but then also to our readers who've been suggesting various operating systems. It's great to get some feedback and know that you guys appreciate this. And also, we're getting to the point where anytime you guys ask about an operating system, we're just like, check out this stream. So we want to keep that up, and any operating system that people are asking about a lot, we'll check out. Although we've also checked out some ones that seem like a little bit sketchy or not maintained. So we do try to curate them and show you guys only ones that are well supported, have a good community, and are generally like something you might want to run. Although we are getting a lot of requests for Temple OS, so trust me, it is happening. But yeah, so that's going to do it for our stream today. James, thank you again for hosting another episode of Hat Talk. I have to say, they're going great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's going fantastically, isn't it? And Michael is still nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, no, Michael's still on his, we're calling it a sabbatical, but really it's just an unexplained disappearance at this point. But hey, we're on Michael number 3 at this point, and I'm sure he'll turn up when he's done doing whatever cryptozoology he's doing. He's just a very, he's a crypto person, He can't help but look for Bigfoot.
Yeah,
so,
Bitcoin prices are going wild right now. I'm sure he's, I don't know, doing all sorts of stuff with Dogecoin or whatever.
I think crypto means cryptozoology. Anybody who's saying otherwise just doesn't understand the root of the word. But anyway, so if you guys want to check out some other great episodes, you can also check out the Varonis brand channel, where our sometimes co-host Killian is also doing the threat update, where he talks about the ways that big companies are combating all sorts of things from ransomware to malware to insider threats and what they do to stop it. So if you're curious about the way that real businesses are getting hit with all sorts of malware and other attacks, that is your place to learn about it. And you can check that out on the Varonis brand channel. We're also doing a new series with my colleague Mike that's going through certifications, and we'll have more information on hackingwithfriends.com up whenever, hopefully sometimes this week. So check out that stream. It went really well on our first attempt of doing it, so we're going to keep bringing it back, and we'll see you again later on Friday as well for our live stream. So, all right, thank you guys. We'll see you next time, and yeah, James, great job. Excellent hat. Fedora,
thank you.
Excellent hat.
Thank you.
Next time, red hat. Bye.
Red hat. Bye.